Okay, so we're at the bottom of Mem Zayin Amud Beis, the very bottom. If you recall last week, and we spent a good bit of time on this last week, going through this. I know, Michael, you were very focused on it. Is this whole question of well, we started by saying this Misha Para. So we talked about the Misha Para, which is a sort of a rabbinic, I don't know, a klala, but certainly a very strong admonition about how Jews should look at contracts and keeping their word and not going back on their word. So the Gemara just said in a brief couple of lines that Misha Eina Omed B'Diburo, then he gets the Misha Para. So the Gemara, just quickly, we said that it makes sense according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says Mos Konos. So if a person, we know, of course, from everything we've discussed, that money isn't kona, it's the chayfetz, the product, the fruit, the product that's kona. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, since Mos is midaraisa, then Mos konos, so we understand why you get a mishapara. But according to Rish Lakish, who says that Meshicha is midaraisa, and the fellow did not take the fruit, he didn't take the product, why is there a mishapara? He never, he didn't own it or control it, so backing out should not be as serious as a mishapara. So the Gemara just answered Mishum Devarim, because words alone matter. Even though we know generally that words cannot finalize a contract, not then, not now, but the Gemara tells us that the Chacham say that even though it's not finalized, you can back out, but you shouldn't back out, and therefore if you back out, you get this very serious admonition that the God who punished the Doramabel, Aflaga, and even more, as the Gemara will say later, from Mitzrayim and everything, that God will visit all kinds of terrible things on you. And that's a very powerful klala. So that's how we left it. In the very bottom line, Mishum Devarim. Words alone are bad. Okay, now, we're going to pick it up from here. Frek the Gemara, Ubedevarim mi kol ba'avol. Are you telling me that just words alone, two people talking and said, I want to buy your horse. And the fellow says, sure, I'll sell you my horse for $100. Nothing happened, not even a reference to, I'll give you money. It was just what looks like a discussion. And that's Dvorim. And the Chachamim say, Mishapara. Frek the Gemara, Ubedevarim mi kol ba'avol. You mean to tell me that this avol Mishapara is by Dvorim? For Hatanya, we're now in the top of Mem Chesam and Aleph. For Hatanya, we learned in a brisa. What does the brisa say? Reb Shimon Omer. Reb Shimon says in this brisa. Now, this is the same Reb Shimon, by the way, that we said last week and the week before in our Mishnah. What does Reb Shimon say? Kol hakesef shebiyado yodo al ha'el yoino. That the person who has the money, he is the stronger party, which counters everything we said before from the Tanakhama and everybody else, that money doesn't count. What do you mean money? The fact that he gave him money should mean nothing. Says Reb Shimon, oh yes, that in a certain sense, he is the stronger of the parties, and now the other fellow has to bring strong proofs to undo. So Reb Shimon argues with the Tanakhama. So that Reb Shimon says in the Brisa, it's important. Af al pisha omru talus kona diner zohav, the ain't diner zohav kona talus. Remember what we said about a diner zohav. We said that a diner zohav is not money, it's produce. When is it produce? In contrast to a silver dinar, which is money, a gold dinar, bless you, is produce. In other words, it's considered a chayfetz. But with regard to other produce, a dinar zob is money. That's how we defined it, because a dinar zov back in the day was very chashuv, but it wasn't the coin of the realm. The silver was the coin of the realm. So silver was money, and a zov was a chayfetz. So says Rashi, ve'ein a zov coin of talus, top Rashi, the legabi peiris hava dava tava. In and of itself, it is produce. But legabi peiros, legabi other produce, it's considered money. So Reb Shimon says in this brisa, Afa pisha omutalis kona dinar zahav, ve'ein dinar zahav kona talos. Even though we say that a talos, meaning that's the equivalent of payers, a talos, a product, is kona dinar zahav, but a dinar zahav is not kona talos. Why? Because a dinar zahav is considered money. Mikol makom kach halacha. Nevertheless, this is the halacha. What does he mean? This is the halacha that when push comes to shove, it's considered a contract, but you're allowed to undo the contract. That's what it means. The kol makom kach halacha. That even though you made a transaction with the dinar zov, you're allowed to retract. Avol says that Reb Shimon, Misha Para, the Anshe Dora Mabel, the Anshe Dora Flaga, and then he adds, when the Anshe Sodom Va'amora, or Mitzrayim Bayam, it's not enough the God of the Dora Mabel and the Dora Flaga, but even more so, the God of Sodom and Amora and Mitzrayim, also Lifra, Memisha, and Omed B'dibura. So you see how powerful this is, that even though it's not a contract, nevertheless, Reb Shimon said that the punishment is severe, and if you violate this agreement, then also lift from Mishain Omed B'dibura. All right, so Rashi says, Mikol Makom Plomer, after the Peronius or Sida Lova ala Chayzer, the Peronius, the punishments, the bad things that will be visited on the person who backs out of the contract. Kain halacha she'ein bizdin yicholam la'akim biyada. Listen to this. The Bezdin has no jurisdiction to force the deal, but ecclesiastically, the Rabbi Shalom frowns upon it. So, in Basar V'dam, in our daily world, absolutely you can back out. But in the spiritual world, the world of the Rabbi Shalom, where he expects us to go beyond Basar V'dam. In other words, we are regular people, and we have halachas and laws and everything else. And you would think that if you fulfill the halakha and you fulfill the law, you're doing good. Nevertheless, you have to go l'fnim mishur sadim, and even if the Bezdin can't force you, you should know the Rabbi Shalom is going to hold it against you. Okay, so that's the whole inyan of Mishapara, that it's a step beyond what you and I and everybody else should accomplish ben odom l'chavera. As I use this, I mean that's how we look at it. So he says kain halacha, that even though that's the law, but nevertheless you are punished with the mishapara.
Excuse me, Rabbi. I have my daughter working on your question, so I missed a place here. If you can tell me where
we're a memches amid aleph. We're memches amid aleph, where we ask the question. Okay, the Gemara says that devarim, that words alone can cause a mishapara, meaning a curse from the Rabbanu Shalom, that things won't go well with you if you back out of just a oral agreement without any physical manifestation of a deal, meaning no one put down $1, no one did anything physical other than just you and I talking out. I say, Jay, I want to buy your horse, and you tell me, sure, I'll sell it you for $100, and that's it. That's the Devarim. So the Gemara wants to say, Amem Zayin Amid Beis, that that's enough to create the atmosphere for a Mishapara. So the Gemara now asks, is that the case? You're telling me the words alone, but take a look at this brisa. So now we're learning this brisa with Reb Shimon Aimer, and Reb Shimon says that the first part of the brisa, which we're now reciting, says that even though a talus, which is bought for a gold dinner, cannot create a contract, still the halacha is that if you do it, you exchange the talis for a gold dinar, that's enough of a agreement that if you back out of that agreement without having traded the talis for the dinar, you just whatever spoke it out, then you get the mishapara. Okay, that's what that brisa says, because the Gemara now we're going to go to the second part, which is going to distinguish words and say, how can you say that words are sufficient? We're going to see not. So okay, that's we're up to now. The 6th to 7th line.
Yeah, thank you.
The brisa goes on. The brisa continues. Amem chesam and aleph. V'hanose v'not b'dvarim lo kana. The brisa says that if you exchange a talis for a dinar zahav and a dinar zahav, and they're not kind of, in other words, they have no ability to make a deal, still it engenders a mishapara. But hanose v'nosim b'dvarim, but if two people just exchange words, then lo kana. And so what's the upshot? So here's the point. But if someone backs out of a oral discussion between two people, which doesn't seem to have any contractual value because they're just talking, ein ruach chachamim noicha hamenu. Look at the language. It doesn't say mishapara. It says ein ruach chachamim noicha hamenu. That the ruach of chachamim is not noicha. Look at Rashi. Ein ruach chachamim noicha hamenu. A nachas ruach lechachme Yisrael b'masav. There is no nachas ruach. There is no positive aura among the chachme Yisrael for such an agreement. Shazeh ein datam noicha aleim haimenu al yado. In other words, it's not the proper thing to do, but nowhere does it say you're going to get a mishapara. So a mishapara is the extreme rabbinic, I won't call it a curse, shalom, but it's the extreme rabbinic view of scaring people, making people not want to cross that line. So if I were to tell you, coming from, let's say Reb Moshe, or the Rambam, or any Gadol, who would say, if you were living in that time and say, don't you back out of an agreement that you spoke to someone else and da da da. Why? Because some terrible things are going to befall you. Then most of us would tremble. I mean, the Rambam said it, or the Amoraim said it, or any great person that you can think of said, don't do this. So you're not going to take upon yourself to say, I know better than the Rambam. I know better than Chazal. I'm going to do it. We wouldn't do it, because a mishapara is a terrible thing to hang over you. So so Reb Shimon says in this brisa that if you make the exchange between a talis and a dinar zahav, which clearly is very murky as to whether or not the dinar zahav is money or not, and the brisa says even though it's not money and you can't make that transaction, but if you make it mishapara. And then the second half of the brisa goes on to say, but if the hanosa b'dvorim, in other words, you didn't exchange the dinar zahav for the talis as the first part of the brisa. All you did is, I'll give you a dinar zahav for your talis. You just said it. You didn't do it. Then says the brisa, loikana, nowhere do we see anything about a mishapara. Ruach HaChol Nechemena isn't a great thing, but it's not a mishapara. I mean, in the panoply of let's call it curses, or the panoply of things that can befall you, there's a huge difference between a mishapara and Ruach HaChol Nechemena. Okay, the rabbis don't like it, but nowhere is there a powerful punch that says, don't do it because something's going to happen to you or to your grandchildren or children or grandchildren. Mishapara means somewhere along the line, the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to do to you what he did to the Dor Mabel or the Dor Haflaga. Are you kidding me? the Dora Mabel, the Dora Flugger, the Rebbeinu Shalom had such a powerful sentiment. That's going to happen to me or my children. Chas v'sholom, I would never do such a thing. So again, this is more of an agada than it is a deep, insightful instruction. But nevertheless, the Gemara is telling us something very powerful here. It's giving us a lesson on how Yidden should behave amongst each other. Don't go there. Don't offer to buy your horse for the money if you don't actually mean it or are going to do it. So we have to be very, very careful. I mean, Al Pi Halacha, I saw this, and I think we either discussed it or heard it. There's Shalos and Shuvas on whether or not a Yid is allowed to go window shopping. What does that mean? It means if you go into a store and you're not really bent on buying anything, but again, people go in, they look, they want to get ideas for fashion or this, that, the other, and then you have a storekeeper who welcomes you, comes in, and he has a havamina you're coming in to buy, to shop. That's what he's there for. You had no havamina, but you just walk in, then some poskim say that you're over lav, right? Because again, you misled him. What do you mean I misled him? I just came in to look. I don't, I'm not. So the teretz is, without getting into that subject, is look at how subtle the halacha is in terms of misleading someone, the favor or whatever you want to call it, that you have to have sort of the purest motives. Here, two people are talking, and it's not as if they're going to make a deal or they may be thinking of making a deal, and right away, you're concerned about things happening that you would tremble in your skin if, in fact, a mishapara or whatever it is. Anyway, this is the context of what this Gemara is about. So what's the second part of the brisa? That two people who are just talking devarim. Remember, the bottom of Mem Zayin of the day says the devarim alone can be mishapara. Frek the Gemara with devarim mikabel avol. Is there avol mishapara for devarim? Here we see in this brisa the devarim. If two people are just talking in words, I'll buy this, you buy that. Loy kana but it doesn't say mishapara. So this is the proof he wants to bring that how can you say, according to Rish Lakish, who says that you need Mashiach, and we don't have Mashiach here, but nevertheless there's a mishapara, answers the Gemara. You know why there's a mishapara? Because it was Devarim. Wait a minute. This is a Beferish Brisa that Rabbi Shiur brings down that Devarim do not bring a mishapara. At best, it brings a ein ruach chachamim noicha menu. That's far short of mishapara. Yeah, Jay.
So these kinds of situations, like you said about walking into a store, I think it's better, and this is something I do. I walk in and I tell the salesman who's walking to me, I'm only here to look at what you have. I'm not here to buy today.
Oh, okay. So you've already up front
right when you walk
don't be misled by my actions. Yeah. That's already different than where he has a habit and I have a customer. You've been right up front, and that you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to look at things, but don't deceive the guy.
But also with this verbal conversation that's going on, if you know between the two people you're not going to buy, you just want to get a feel for how much he wants. Will he lower the price, this and that? You come out at the beginning and say, look, I'm just here for information. And I don't want you to get the impression that I'm ready to buy.
Right.
That would obviate. I mean, that would just take care
absolutely. That would obviate that halacha of lifnei iver or misleading someone, because you were very upfront and didn't give him time to say, I have a customer, and then he'll be disappointed that you walked out without it. Absolutely. You could definitely do that. But if you don't do it, then you have that kind of situation where you're misleading someone. And again, look how great the burden of the Jewish people is, that something that I wouldn't even think about subtly, very subtly. Yeah, I'm just coming in. People do it all the time. I look, I see, I discuss, and then I walk out. Okay? Most people wouldn't give a second thought about that. But look how halachically, we Jews have to be careful in everything we do to understand that someone's feelings are going to be hurt terribly. I mean, what do they lose? Okay, a couple of minutes of conversation, maybe he even enjoyed the conversation with you, but at the same time, he had an expectation, and that expectation is what we're talking about, right? I want to buy you a horse. I'll pay you $100. Okay, fine, and then we both go home. It reminds me of the famous, it's a joke, but the person who says to this fella, I said, someone says, I have a car to sell. It's on Shabbos. You can't talk business. I have a car to sell. So it says, this is Shabbos Gered. How much are you asking for the car? So he says, this is Shabbos Gered. I want $100. Okay, so this is Shabbos Gered. Let me think about it. And then he comes later on. He says, so is it still $100? This is Shabbos Gered. It's already sold. So, I mean, here you have two people who are trying their best to avoid a Monday discussion about business and Shabbos, and they're trying to transact a deal. And at the end of the day, the one fellow who says, I think I want to buy that for $100. And the other one says, Mr. Shabbos, it's already sold. I mean, it's more of
It's cute.
and understanding what you should and shouldn't do on Shabbos. But by the same token, the point is words matter. Words matter. When you say something and someone understands you in a sense to have an expectation, then you can always say, well, why should I be held responsible for his expectation? I'm just saying what I'm saying. Teretz is you have to be very, very careful that what you say can't be projected onto somebody else with a different intent and meaning. Again, it's very nuanced, but we're just making the point how careful someone has to be in terms of what they do. So anyway, so the kasha is, you're telling me Devarim matter and it's Mishapara. We see a Beferish Brisa here that at worst it's Ein Ruach HaMeleicha Menu, but it's not Mishapara, right? It's not a Mishapara. V'Amar Rava, the Gemara goes further, and Rava says, "Anu ein lanu ela ein ruach hachamim noicha hamenu." Rava endorses, in other words, he puts us in primatur on this, and he says, "You're right." And Rava was the Gadol Hador, he was one of the great figures, and he said, this brisa, it's 100% correct. Anu ein lanu ela ruach hachamim noicha hamenu. The worst that we have here is that the chachamim are not happy with him, right? They don't like his behavior, but it's far from a Mishapara. So if Midor or Rabbanan, the worst you can have is in Rucham Neicha Menu, how can we, so we're back to the same point, how can you interpret in Rosh Lakish that there should be, and Rosh Lakish says that the Chachamim in the Mishnah are right. And who are the Chachamim in the Mishnah? Who argue on Reb Shimon, right? They argue on Reb Shimon. When you look at the Mishnah, the Chachamim, what's the language of the Mishnah? Take a quick look. The Mishnah says, No Solomos, Solomosha Chaimenu Paris, Yachalach the boy, this is the Chachamim, the Tanakama, as it were, the Avol, Amr Mishapara. So you see, and Rashi says there, Pliki ad Rabbanon, Reb Shimon argues on Rabbanon, the Amr Nosal Mos, Yachalach the boy, Afilu Lokeach, Va'osher Reb Shimon, Lemema, Moichesh HaKol B'Yadu, Hu Yachalach the boy, Evel Lokeach and Yachalach the boy. So the Rashi explains in the Mishnah that the seller who took the money can back out, but the buyer can't back out. So and that's should be Rosh Lakish's position. Rosh Lakish says that Mashiach is midaraisa. There was no Mashiach, so how could you possibly say you get a Mishapara for not doing anything? So this is the Gemara's kasha, and it remains a strong kasha because Rava endorses it and says there's no Mishapara here. So what do we do? This is the kasha.
Excuse me, Rabbi. One
Gemara, Devarim, the Ikar Bahadei Mos, Kol Ba'avol, Devarim, the Lekar Bahadei Mos, will call Ba'avol. So comes the Gemara now answers and wants to set the record straight. It says, no. We're not talking about about words without action. We're not talking about that. Devarim be'ikar b'hademos, if there are words, in other words, an agreement between two people, and then there is a physical act of giving money, there wasn't a Mashiach, there wasn't anything, just the fact that money was put down, right? Then someone who backs out gets a mishapara. But dvorim v'leka b'hademos, where there is dvorim between you and I, which is not accompanied by any kind of payment of any kind of money, loy kor ba'avon, then there is no avon. So the Gemara backs out of saying that simple words alone don't engender a mishapara, and clarifies that what we meant by words was never words alone, it was words with money. That justifies a mishapara. Words without money is ein ruach hachamim noicha hamenu. So the Gemara is, as it always does, and we have this discussion again and again and again, is that where our havamina here was that Rava is saying that devarim can never engender a mishapara, and therefore it's a kasha, because according to Rosh Lakish, why is there mishapara? Because he holds like the Tanakama of the Mishnah, and the Tanakama of the Mishnah says that someone backs out from a deal, gets a mishapara. You know when that is? When you offered money. But if you didn't offer money, then it's not possible to have a mishapara. So that's how the Gemara wants to distinguish and say that, okay, we can reconcile this brisa, because when the brisa says mishapara, that's when there was an exchange of a talus and a dinner, and there was a full-blown exchange, then we make a mishapara. But if there is just words alone, without an exchange, then we hold, and like Rava says, that you don't get the extreme ecclesiastic punishment of mishapara, but you do have you violated this ruach hachamim that the rabbis say you shouldn't do it. Okay, Rashi says, "Anu ein lanu klala acheres ela eina hagin be'enei chachamim." Not a klala. So this mishapara is a klala. It's a curse. It says no, we don't have a full blown curse here. Ela eina hagin. It's not proper be'enei chachamim. Kol ba'avol mishum devarim shebo al kach lechlal maaseh avamos lo konu midoraisa. Now Rashi is going to say something very, very interesting here. But money is not konu midoraisa. So we didn't discuss this, but let's look at what Rashi says. The nafkamina, what is the nafkamina? What is the real difference between Rabbi Yochanan and Rosh Lakish? The le'inyan isura, not dine mominus, not monetary halacha, but iser veheter, kagon, in kiddush bois isha Rabbi Yochanan. Let's say, think about this. If two people transacted and one person gave the money, so according to Rabbi Yochanan, you already have a transaction. Now you take that money and you are mekadesh a woman, right? You use that for you buy a ring and you're mekadesh a woman, right? Now you're talking iser and heter. Can you mekadesh a woman? That's not mominous anymore. So the Rabbi Yochanan have a kiddushin. It's a valid kiddushin because this money was midoraisa yours. The midoraisa kana, v'didehu, l'Rosh Lakish lo have a kedushin. So now there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rosh Lakish, not in mishapara, which is okay. It's not a good thing, but we're talking about Isra and Heter. Can you marry a woman with the money that was transacted? So according to Rosh Lakish, you can't. Because according to Rosh Lakish, it's not yours. The deal wasn't done. The deal's only done when you have Mashiach, when you transact with the product, not with the money. Now that's a powerful machlokes. So Rashi touches on this here and says, Chevra, this is the real problem. The problem isn't, okay, mishapara is a terrible thing. But a mishapara isn't violative of a doraisa. It's a rabbinic thing. but you're going to be over a lav. You're going to be mekadosh a woman with a ring that's not yours. You can't do that. That's an isser. So we've now okay. This is the first blush that we have that this machlokes Rabbi Yochanan Lakish is not merely on the surface what we think it is, a discussion about isser v'heter, and is it a mishapara or ruach chachamim, all very important things, but lemaisa, what? All right, so the person shouldn't go around doing it because they have to worry about a mishapara. I got bigger problems if we're worrying about mishapara, about whether or not I took this money, I bought a ring, I was mekadosh an isha, my wife, and I gave her a beautiful ring, but it's not my money. It has to be yours, right? It has to be your money. It can't be borrowed money. It can't be somebody else's money. Now we're talking real problems. That's what Rashi is touching on here, is that this is where the real problem exists in this whole discussion between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, is whether or not if Mos D'Oraisa or Mashiach D'Oraisa. Now we're talking about a real Isser V'Heter problem. Okay, so keep that in mind. I mean, the Gemara doesn't go into it right now. Rashi is suggesting that this is where the heart of this machlokes is going to be, and we'll have to see later how that plays out. But right now, just keep in the back of your mind that that what we're talking about. Okay, oftentimes the Gemara, you can say, okay, it's not Lamaisa, how does it impact us on a daily life? Okay, it's a Mishapara. Does that really mean something in our time that we say that the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to punish us? Maybe yes, maybe no. But everybody agrees that, if we're talking Isser V'Heter, that overshadows everything else, both in the time of the Gemara and in our time now. If the halacha were to be, for instance, that money will not be koine, and you have to have the payers, and someone transacts the money, can you rely on Rabbi Yochanan as opposed to Rish Lakish that I can marry this woman with the money that I got? I mean, that's okay. You're taking a step maybe over the cliff. But anyway, just so we understand it. Okay.
Rabbi?
Yes.
I wanted to go back a second when I said earlier that if you go into a store, you tell them up front, I'm just here to look.
Right.
And you don't have any problems. But typically in a lot of stores, if you go, let's say, into an automobile place, you walk in and you say, I just want to look at some of the cars. The salesman doesn't take it like, all right, you're not interested. It becomes a challenge for the salesman to convince you that
to buy the car.
Of cars you're going to love.
Right.
So it doesn't, even though you said the right words, they don't necessarily believe that it's not possible to convince you.
Right. So I hear that, but Jay, keep in mind that while I understand your point, and it's a correct point, but at the same time, look, I don't want to deceive anybody. So if he takes it as a challenge and wants to convince me, okay, I know in my mind I'm walking out of here without a car. He takes it as a challenge that I should walk out of here with a car. But that's not my achrayus. In other words, even if you're right that I were to project that by saying it, I know he's going to take it as a challenge and want to convince me, but then ein l'davar sof. Then we really have you never have closure on anything, because no matter what I do, I walk down the street and someone sees me and says, oh, that's my mark. I'm gonna do something, and I'm going to deceive him in some way. I mean, in other words, we have to draw a line. We have to say, you have done everything you can to disassociate yourself and to say, I really like what you have in the window. If you tell me not to look, I'll walk out, so to speak, right? I'm not going to waste your time, but I would like to look. And the fellow says, sure. In other words, the salesman says, he thinks he's just going to look, I'm going to show him. But that's not your achrayus. You understand? I understand your point, but at the same time, the fact that you may even know, because you're in the business and you say, I know that this guy thinks that I'm a challenge, you've done everything you can to dissuade that you're not misleading. There's no lifnei iver. I think that's the most that can be expected, because if that's, no man is an island that he doesn't somehow associate with other people and have some connection. And if you were to be correct in making that assumption, then I've got to go around every day, all day, not talking to anybody, not looking at anybody, because the minute I look at something or something else, are they going to be choshev that I'm trying to, mislead someone? So it's a good, I mean, you're right into thinking, but we have to distinguish between what's in my mind, that I did everything up front to make it clear what my position is. Then if somebody says, I'm going to take it as a challenge, okay, fine, and you can do what you want to do. I've already told you, I love what you have, I admire it, I would like to admire it, and not necessarily buy it. So again, but it's kind of a fine line. You hit on it. What's the fine line here? Where are we over? Where are we not over? But you have to do everything in your power. Okay. So now, okay. So we've now distinguished as much as we can between what is En Ruach Chachamim Noichamenu and what is the Mishapara. So now the Gemara. So now we're going to try to understand what's the svara of Rosh Lakish, because basically this whole discussion is in Rosh Lakish. In Rabbi Yochanan, it's a done deal. The deal is done. He gave the money. Now you're subject to Mishapara. Rosh Lakish is the one who says Mashiach is midaraisa. There was no Mashiach, so how can I possibly be over Mishapara? It says Rava, you're not over Mishapara. You're only over in Ruach Chachamim Noicha because it's not the right thing to do, even if you put your money into the deal and there was nothing else. Omar Rava, so Rava comes and says, I'm going to prove from a pasuk, Kra, and from a Mishnah, like that Rosh Lakish is right, that what? That Meshicha is midaraisa and not money. What's the raya? Okay, so we're going to start this, and this is a little bit complicated. So let's look into this. What is the pasuk? So he says over here, there's a pasuk in Vayikra. So I'm looking in the Chumash, and this is in the end of Parshas Vayikra. The pasuk says as follows: "Benefesh ki secheteh," and if a person sins umolo mal b'Hashem, right, and he commits a mal, a bad thing before Hashem, okay. Now here is a list of what's included in those bad things to Hashem. So what are they? So here we go. The chichesh ba'amiso b'fikadon. So let's say he commits an act of he lies. Okay, he lies. B'fikadon regarding a pikadon, in other words, a pledge that he made. Oh, b'sesumis yod, or regarding something he did improper regarding a loan. Oh, b'gezel, or outright theft. Oh, oshek is amiso, or he did something improper with regard to paying wages to his employee. Okay. So and then the next passage says omotza aveda, or he said something improper. He did something improper about finding a lost object, which may not have been lost. So these are the categories that the Torah tells us that you will be punished, right? That you incur the wrath of God if you do these. Now notice, he says pikadon, sesumis yod. What is sesumis yod? A loan. Okay, you defrauded someone with a loan. Okay, and then he says gezel, and then he says oshek amiso, or with regard to paying a wage. So we're going to focus on these two because that's what the Gemara talks about. The sesumis yod is a loan, and oshek amiso is a pledge. So let's look. This is the pasuk. Now let's look at the Gemara. Omar Rava, Kura Kura. What is the pasuk? And this is the pasuk. I just read it. The chichish b'misa b'pikadon, the sulas yod, or begezel or oshek amisa. Says the Gemara, Tsumis yod. What is Tsumis yod alone? Rav Chizda, Ron shiachad lo kli lahalvasa. Oh, what does that mean? So Rav Chizda comes and says that he pledged a kli. He pledged a kli for the loan. What does that mean? that I lend you, Jay, $100. And you say, you know what, Tuvia, I'm going to let's pick something. I have a book, a very expensive book, and I'm going to pledge this book to you as a collateral for the loan. So right away, you've given me, you've given the assurance that the loan will be paid. Otherwise, there is this book, which is expensive. It's a rare book, and that book is going to be yours. So what have you done? You have that you've pledged for the loan. Let's go a little weiter. Oshak, same with wages. Okay, I'm an employer, you're an employee, and I'm going to give you $100 a day. In order for you to feel comfortable that I'm going to pay you that $100, I, the employer, take this book, and I say, I'm pledging this book to you, this rare book, that if I don't pay you, then you're going to get this book. So in both cases, there's a pledge that is supporting the event, the loan or the wage. Okay, and that's what Rav Chizda says. Rav Chizda explains both of those from the pasuk Yochid L'Kli La'ashka. Okay, that's the pasuk in the Torah. Okay, good. Now, there's a second pasuk. What's the second pasuk? So the Gemara says, when the Torah repeats prophets later in Vayikra, Ksiv, so now, when let's say you committed a sin and you didn't repay the loan, right? Or the seller or the employer didn't pay the wage. Says the pasuk, okay, I'm reading from the pasuk, and he committed the sin. So if he stole, he has to return. Or it's a oshek asher osa, or the wage that he promised. Or it's a pikadon asher hefkei, or saveda asher matzah. And all of these, the Torah says that you have to pay a chomesh, you have to pay a knas, a penalty of 20%, and you have to give what's called an osham gezela, a carbon osham gezela. Wait a minute. This pasuk doesn't talk about a loan. The repeat pasuk repeats the first pasuk from the first pasuk and omits the line about a loan. Remember, we said it was about a wage, about a pikadon, and about a loan. The repeat doesn't say that you have to do this for a loan. So what's going on here? Where does the loan fit in? In other words, the loan is not recaptured. Says the Gemara, but it doesn't repeat. It doesn't repeat that the Oshem Gezela and the Knas apply to the loan. Correct the Gemara, my Tama. Why not? Lav mishum de meshicha. Here the Gemara wants to bring the proof that the pasuk tells us, like Rish Lakish. Why? The Gemara suggests is the reason why it doesn't repeat by the loan, because there was no meshicha. In other words, the pledge was given, right? The book was put down, but there was never meshicha. In other words, if I am paying you, I'm the lover, and I want to give you a book, right? Then the malva has to make meshicha. The malva has to pick up the book to say, I'm acquiring the book. He never acquired it. It was sitting on the table. It never went into his possession. theoretically, and I think I know what you're going to ask, Jay, but theoretically, he could have picked up the book and put it back down and said, okay, I accept this book as the collateral for the loan I'm giving you. But he didn't do it. Says the Gemara, that's proof positive that since there was no Mashiach, there was no collateral. Right? In other words, the collateral never went from the Love to the Malveh because there was a lack of Mashiach. This is the proof that we want to give from the Pasuk, like Rish Lakish, that you need Mashiach midaraisa. Go ahead, Jay.
Why don't the words matter? I mean, you're sitting down doing a transaction. The words should matter, right? That's an obvious. There's no other discussion. There's no other distraction. They're talking about the loan, and here's the collateral. He puts it down in front, in front of the lender to basically he puts on that side of the table. That should be enough.
Okay, so now let's go back to what we said before. In the Brisa, we said that Rava concluded, right? Rava concluded that this Mishapara only applies when there was an actual event that happens. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, the event is money. According to Rish Lakish, the event is Mashiach. But where no event happened, i.e., no Mashiach, according to Rish Lakish, then it's Ruach Chachamim. Then it's only Ruach Chachamim. So Rav Chisda picks up on that and says, okay, I understand that the rabbis aren't happy here. In other words, there's no Mishapara. I understand that it's no Ruach Chachamim. But you know why the Pasuk in the Torah doesn't include Tesumas Yad? Because Mid'oraisa, there was never a transaction, according to Rish Lakish. Since the fellow never did the Mashiach, okay, so there was money loaned. Okay, I agree, there was money loaned. But money loaned, according to Rish Lakish, is no more than Ein Ruach Chachamim. There's only Ein Ruach Chachamim. There's no real teeth to the matter because, after all, we have not really done anything bad, according to Rish Lakish. So he wants to bring a raya here, according to Rish Lakish, that since there was no Mashiach, and Mid'oraisa Mashiach Koneh, therefore, we can conclude that's why the Pasuk does not include Tesumas Yod in the repetition, because he never did anything to engender that kind of thing. That
when he pushes the book across the table, why isn't that equivalent to
no, but he did it. The Lova did it. The Malva has to make a Mashiach. My pushing it to it's my object. Pushing it to the table does nothing. It's only your taking it that makes it. Remember, it's the Mashiach. I can't make a Mashiach on my own thing. That's not what a kinyan is. A kinyan is you making a Mashiach on my thing.
But the fact that you didn't push it back to the other side of the table, doesn't that imply that you're
no Mashiach is de jure. Right. You the Malva have to do something. It's not enough that the Lova just gives it a nudge to you and you look at it and nod your head. That doesn't do anything. You have to physically take that object and either pull it to you or push it or whatever it happens to be. So says the Gemara that's the raya. That's the raya here. Mid'oraisa. Remember, what do we say here? We're saying here that Rava says, the same Rava who made the distinction between Ruach Chachamim and the Mishapara, Rava says there's a Kra, a Pasuk, and a Mishnah to support Rav Lakish. What's the Pasuk? This is the Pasuk. The Pasuk that says that you have to pay a chomesh and a carbon asham for this event. It doesn't happen here. Why doesn't it happen here? Because there is no Mashiach. That's the chap here. Because there was no Mashiach, according to Rish Lakish, that's the proof midaraisa, like Rish Lakish. Otherwise, it would have repeated Tesumas Yod in the second pasuk when it announces the punishments. The punishment is an Osham Gedela or an Osham for a pigeon and a Chomesh and a fifth. Doesn't happen here. Why? Because there was never a kinyan. Right? I mean, that's our thinking right now. So our thinking is that we just gave proof to Rish Lakish that Mashiach is midaraisa because he did not take it. Amale Rav Papa la Rava. We'll try to finish here. So Rav Papa says to Rava, that's your proof? Ema me oshik hu dehadekra. You know what? We said it by oshek, by the case of the wages, right? That was repeated. So says Rav Papa, you know what? It already said by oshek. We don't have to say it by sumas yod. So Rav Papa wants to say that it would have been superfluous to include to sumas yod for the same thing that we said by oshek, because sumas yod and oshek are like the same. I mean, it's not the same, but they're similar. And we already said by oshek that you have to pay the chomesh and you have to bring the carbon. So it's enough. We don't have to repeat it by Tzumas Yad. So Rav Papa is trying to say, no, it's no proof to Rish Lakish that Mashiach Midaraisa. You know why we didn't say it? Because we kind of said it by Oshek. We don't have to say it by Tzumas Yad. That's what Papa wants to sort of say, no, you're not right. So the Gemara says, no, you know what we're talking about? No, you know what we're talking about here? We're talking about where Mashiach was made. There was a Mashiach. In other words, in the case of Oshek, the employee took the book from the employer. He did make Mashiach, and then he gave it back to the employer for safekeeping until the wage was paid. So there was Mashiach. There was Mashiach. So he wants to say, you know why? No, it's not. There's no. You're not correct, because the case of Oshek is speaking where there was Mashiach, but the case of Tzumas Yod, there was no Mashiach. In other words, so he wants to go back and say that Rav Papa's distinction that it's said it by Oshek and not by Tzumas Yod isn't a valid distinction, because we're talking about Shenotlu Mimenu, that he took the book, B'chazro v'hifkido etzlo, and he gave it back to him. So that's the reason why Oshek is you bring a fifth. But Tzumas Yod, why is Tzumas Yod not mentioned here? So we're back to square one, that Tzumas Yod should be a proof that Mashiach is Midarais. And for the Gemara, Hanu Pikadon, if you're going to tell me that by Oshek, the reason why it's different than Tzumas Yod is because you made this Mashiach, then Hanu Pikadon, then that's Pikadon. What is a Pikadon? A Pikadon is a pledge, and you took the pledge and you took it from him, and you're holding the pledge, and that's the reason why a pledge, because you're holding the pledge, the Pikadon. That's why you have to give the chomesh and the carbon. If you're going to tell me that by Oshek, the fellow took the book and gave it back to him, by giving it back to him, that's a Pikadon. So why repeat Oshek? It's a Pikadon already tells me that a Pikadon you have to give a chomesh and a carbon. Why repeat Oshek? It's the same as Pikadon. Answers the Gemara, Trei Gavne Pikadon. There's two types of Pikadon. There's a regular Pikadon, and then there's a Pikadon like an Argamara where you redeposit it. In other words, he's saying that a Pikadon isn't everything. A Pikadon is, I give you a pledge and you hold on to it, but not where we transfer back and forth. Therefore, Pikadon doesn't cover Oshek, and therefore you can't say it. Frank the Gemara Yachat Subas Yod Nami Lahadre Velukme Kagon Shadot Lahaimenu V'Chazer Ifkidu Etzlo. So why doesn't Tzumas Yod say the same thing that you do by Oshek, that he took it and gave it back to him? In other words, why doesn't it say it? He should return it to Lukme, and he gave him a Pikadon. Why does it not say that? So the Gemara says, If the pasuk would say it, lo tiyufta, lo siyata. If we included Tisumis Yod in the same way we include Oshek, then there would be no proof to Rabbi Yochanan and to Resh Lakish. Hashtag lo hadre kro nisayale. Now that the pasuk doesn't say it, it's a proof to Resh Lakish. So this is an astounding answer because the Gemara is saying the kasha is a great kasha. Why does it not say Tisumis Yod, just like it says Oshek? So the answer is because if it said Tisumis Yod, I wouldn't know if the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan and Rosh Lakish. But that's precisely the point. If you don't know according to who the halacha is, then this pasuk is not definitive. And for the Gemara, but we want to make it definitive. And the only way we can make it definitive to interpret is to say, you know why the pasuk didn't include Tisumis Yod in the repetition? Because the halacha is like Resh Lakish. So think about this. We want to have a determined outcome that the halacha is like Resh Lakish. So we interpret the pasuk to say, you know why Tisumis Yod is not included is because we want the outcome to be like Resh Lakish. Because if it was included in the pasuk, we wouldn't be able to pass it like Resh Lakish. That's an astounding thing to say, that the Torah withholds Tisumis Yod because the Torah wants the halacha to be like Resh Lakish 1,000 years later. Because the whole thing of Tisumis Yod in terms of Resh Lakish is later on in the Gemara. It's not at the time of the Torah. The time of the Torah, it's simply why does it not repeat the pasuk? Okay, it should repeat the pasuk Tisumis Yod just like it is with Bikadon and Gezel and Oshek. And the Gemara's answer is because the Torah had a havamina that the halacha would be like Resh Lakish, and therefore it didn't say it. That's an absolutely astounding thing to come up with. So, in any event, this is the end of this discussion. Is that he wants to bring a raya from the pasuk. What's the raya? The raya is because Tisumis Yod wasn't repeated, and because it wasn't repeated because Mashiach is mid'oraisa, and since he didn't do Mashiach, therefore, there's no deal. Forget about Mishapara. There's no deal, and that's the proof. And the proof is because it doesn't say Tisumis Yod, but it says it Oshek, and we can't learn it from Oshek. We know we just said it. We can't learn it from Pikat, which we just said. So therefore, the outcome is, now think about this, that because the pasuk didn't say Tisumis Yod a second time, the halacha is like Resh Lakish. That tzorech iyam, that really requires a great leap of understanding, is what the Torah is telling us. Okay, so we'll stop here. We'll review this briefly. We'll look at the Rashis again to understand what this Gemara is really telling us. Is a very powerful instruction that the Torah that is a raya to Resh Lakish, that you have to have Mashiach to make a kinyan because the Torah didn't repeat Tisumis Yod in the pasuk.
Sure, thank you, Rabbi.
All right, shkoyach everybody.